The tavern was loud with alien laughter, clinking glasses, and music from another world. In the middle of it all, a human waiter moved quietly between the tables. He never spoke much, never looked anyone in the eye. Most ignored him, just another worker. But one alien girl kept staring. Her eyes followed his every step, as if she felt something different about him, a strange pull she could not explain. Then, with a laugh and too much drink in her hand, she reached out suddenly. Her fingers grabbed his shirt and pulled. The fabric tore just a little. The laughter stopped. Her smile froze, because what she saw under that shirt was not something any human should have. The night was alive with sound and color. The space tavern was filled with all kinds of creatures from faraway worlds. Music played from strange instruments that gave off both sound and light. Glasses clinked, voices rose in laughter, and the air smelled of sweet smoke and alien drinks. In the middle of all this, a human walked quietly from table to table. He was just a waiter. At least that was what everyone believed. He carried trays of glowing drinks, plates of food that moved on their own, and he did it without saying a word. His steps were calm, his face without emotion. Some aliens barely noticed him. Others glanced at him with curiosity, but soon looked away. To most, he was nothing more than part of the background. But to her, he was not. At one table sat a young alien girl with silver skin that reflected the neon lights of the tavern. Her eyes, bright and wide, followed the human each time he passed. She laughed with her friends, sipped her drink, and acted as if she was part of their joy. But inside her mind she was not paying attention to them at all. She was focused only on him. Something about the way he moved felt unusual. He was too careful, too silent, almost as if he was hiding inside himself. He carried heavy trays as if they were light. He stepped through the crowd without ever touching anyone, as if he could see paths no one else could see. And when her eyes met his for a brief moment, she felt something strange in her chest, like a spark that told her there was more to him than what he showed. Her friends did not notice her distraction. They were too busy telling stories and singing old songs from their world. She smiled at them, but her thoughts were far away. Drink after drink, the room became louder and brighter, and the warmth in her head grew stronger. She laughed at a joke, but her eyes were already searching for the human again. When he walked past their table once more, carrying a tray full of glowing glasses, her hand moved before her mind could stop it. With a playful smile, she reached out. Her fingers caught the edge of his shirt and tugged. The tray shook, but he held it steady without spilling a single drop. His eyes widened in surprise as he looked down at her hand holding his shirt. Her friends laughed, thinking it was only a silly joke. She laughed too, though the sound came out louder than she meant. And then the fabric tore. It was not much, just a small tear near his shoulder. But in that small space, under the dim light of the tavern, she saw something that stole the breath from her chest. Her smile froze. The laughter round the table faded in her ears. The music still played, voices still shouted, but to her it was all far away now. Her eyes locked on the strange glow beneath the torn shirt. It was a mark. No, not just a mark. Lines, curves, and symbols that seemed to shine softly against his skin. They were not human tattoos. They were not anything a normal person would have. She knew them. She had seen drawings of them long ago, hidden in old stories told by her people. Ancient signs, symbols that belonged to a prophecy whispered across generations. She let go of his shirt slowly, her fingers trembling. Her friends were still laughing, unaware that something had just shifted in the room. The human pulled back, adjusting the tray in his hands. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a storm. For a brief second, they met hers. There was no smile, no anger, only warning. He turned and walked away, moving faster this time, disappearing behind the glowing curtains that led to the kitchen. She sat frozen in her seat, her heart beating too fast. She wanted to speak, to tell her friends what she had seen, but the words never reached her lips. They would not believe her. They would laugh and say she drank too much. But she knew what she had seen was real. The glowing mark was not a trick of light. It was not something random. It was something meant to stay hidden. And the quiet human, the one who walked as if he carried secrets on his shoulders, had just revealed the first piece of it. Her drink sat forgotten on the table. Her laughter was gone. All she could think about was the human waiter and the mystery that now surrounded him. The night that had started with noise and light had suddenly changed into something else, something that whispered of secrets to Big. For the walls of the tavern. And deep inside her, curiosity grew stronger than fear. She knew she had to follow him. The tavern slowly emptied as the night went on. But her mind did not settle. She tried to join her friend's laughter again, but it sounded hollow in her ears. Her eyes kept shifting toward the curtain where the human had vanished. Every time she blinked, she saw that faint glow under his shirt, those strange lines that were not meant to be seen by anyone. When her friends finally left in pairs, she stayed behind, pretending to sip her drink though the glass had long gone warm. She waited until the music softened and only a few guests remained. Then, with quiet steps, she slipped away from her table and moved toward the back of the tavern. The kitchen door stood slightly open. From inside came the soft clatter of dishes, the hiss of steam, and the murmur of a few workers cleaning up. She peeked through and saw him. The human was alone in a corner, placing empty glasses into a crate. His movements were quick, sharp, almost like someone trying to finish a task before being caught. She hesitated, her breath shallow. She knew she should leave it alone. He was only a waiter, and she was only a curious stranger who had pulled too hard on his shirt. Yet something deep inside her insisted that this was more than a mistake. The marks she had seen were not random. They belonged to something old and powerful, something her people used to whisper about when fires burned low and nights stretched long. Finally, she pushed the door open. The sound made him look up. His eyes met hers across the room, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. He did not speak. He did not smile. He simply stood very still, as if deciding whether to stay or disappear. "I saw it," she whispered, her voice unsteady but firm. "Don't pretend I didn't." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He stacked another glass. His back half turned, as if ignoring her would erase her words. She stepped closer. "Those marks on your skin, they are not human, are they?" That made him pause. His hand froze midair before slowly setting the glass down. At last, he turned to face her fully. His eyes were calm but heavy, carrying the weight of someone who had kept too many secrets for too long. "You should forget what you saw," he said quietly, "for your own peace." But forgetting was impossible. Her mind raced with memories of old stories, tales of chosen ones marked by symbols, of bridges between worlds, of someone who would rise when the signs returned. No one ever believed those stories. They were myths told to children. Yet here, standing in front of her, was proof that they were not just tales. "Where did you get them?" she asked, her voice more urgent now. "Were you born with them, or did someone give them to you?" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I am nobody." She wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. Nobody, a simple waiter with marks that glowed like prophecy. No, he was not nobody. He was hiding something, and maybe even from himself. The clatter of a dish dropping somewhere in the kitchen broke the moment. Another worker passed by, and the human quickly moved away from her, returning to his crates as if nothing had happened. The worker gave her a puzzled look, but she pretended to be waiting for someone and said nothing. When the worker left again, she caught his eye once more. His voice was softer this time, almost a plea. "If you are wise, you will stop asking questions." But wisdom and curiosity rarely walk together. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I cannot stop. I know what I saw. You are not just a waiter. Those marks, they belong to something bigger than us. Tell me I'm wrong." He did not answer. His silence was its own truth. The lights in the tavern dimmed, signaling closing time. The other workers gathered their things and left, leaving the two of them alone in the half-light. The air felt heavier now, filled with questions that refused to fade. She took a step back, realizing she had pushed too far for the night. But as she turned to leave, he spoke again, his tone careful, almost warning. "Curiosity can open doors that cannot be closed. If you follow this path, you may never return to the life you know." She looked over her shoulder, her eyes meeting his one last time. "Maybe I was never meant to stay in the life I know." With that, she left the kitchen, her thoughts a storm of wonder and fear. The streets outside were quiet, the stars above watching like silent witnesses. She wrapped her cloak tighter and walked into the night, but her mind was not on the road. Ahead, it was on the human waiter and the light that glowed beneath his shirt. Something inside her had shifted, and she knew the world would not look the same again. The streets outside the tavern were almost empty, glowing faintly under strange lamps that gave the night a blue shimmer. The alien girl walked slowly, her thoughts heavy, her heart still racing from what she had seen. Every sound felt louder than usual: the rustle of the wind, the hum of distant machines, the faint echo of her own footsteps. She had laughed earlier, she had joked, but now her mind refused to settle. She could not let it go. The marks on his skin were too real to sharpen her memory. They were not simple designs. They carried weight, meaning, and history. She had seen them once before. Etched in old carvings shown to her as a child. Back then, she had thought of them as only legends, symbols of a story told to fill long nights. But tonight, those symbols had come alive on the skin of a quiet human who wanted nothing more than to disappear into the crowd. She told herself she should forget. Life would be easier that way. But when she reached the corner of the street, she found herself stopping. Something inside her whispered that this was not chance. Meeting him, pulling his shirt, seeing those marks, it was not just an accident. She turned back. The tavern door was locked now, its lights dimmed. But she waited in the shadows across the street. She was patient, her silver skin hidden beneath her cloak, her eyes fixed on the back door. She did not wait long. Soon, he came. Out, the human carried a small bag slung over his shoulder, his steps quiet, his face lowered as if he hoped no one would notice him. He did not look around, yet his movements were cautious, like someone always expecting to be followed. She let him walk ahead, then slipped out of the shadows and trailed him at a distance. The city stretched around them in layers of light and metal. Towers rose high into the night sky, while narrow streets twisted below like veins. He walked through them with the ease of someone who knew the quiet paths. She followed carefully, her steps light, keeping just enough space so he would not hear. But he did hear. At one point, he stopped suddenly and turned his head slightly. She froze, pressing against a wall, her breath caught in her throat. He stood there for a moment, listening, his eyes searching the empty street. Then he kept walking again, faster this time. She felt her heart thudding, but instead of retreating, she smiled to herself. He knew someone was behind him, yet he did not call out, did not confront her. He was too used to being chased, too used to moving like someone who always had something to hide. Finally, he entered a quieter part of the city where the buildings grew older, their walls cracked and lights flickering. He slipped into a small building, almost hidden between two larger ones. The door closed behind him. She hesitated. Should she step forward? Should she knock? Or should she leave? Her mind argued with itself, but her curiosity had grown into something larger now, almost a force pushing her forward. She crossed the street and pressed her hand against the cool surface of the door. She did not enter. Instead, she listened. Inside, faint sounds reached her movement, the rustle of fabric, the scrape of something heavy being placed down. Then, silence. And then, softly, a voice, his voice. I told you not to follow. Her breath caught. He had known all along. Slowly, the door opened. He stood there, framed in the faint light of the room behind him. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried that same warning she had seen in the tavern. You are curious, he said, but curiosity can be dangerous. She lifted her chin, her voice steady even though her heart raced. Dangerous or not, I cannot forget what I saw. Tell me the truth. What are those marks? He studied her for a long time. Then, with a quiet sigh, he stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. Inside, the room was small and simple. A bed, a table, a few shelves with objects wrapped in cloth. But the air felt heavy, filled with something unspoken. He closed the door behind them and faced her. Those marks, he said slowly, are not mine to explain. They were given to me before I even understood what they meant, and I have spent my whole life trying to keep them hidden. She listened, her eyes fixed on him, waiting for more. People believe they are only stories. He continued, legends, nothing more. That is what I wanted them to be. But they are real, too real, and now you know. Her heart beat faster. Every word pulled her deeper into the mystery. Why you? She asked softly. Why would a human carry marks of alien prophecy? He gave a small, bitter smile. That is the question I have been running from all my life. The room fell into silence, but the silence was not empty. It was filled with questions, heavy and waiting. She looked at him, at the man who had lived as a shadow, and she knew one thing clearly. This was only the beginning. The small room felt quieter than the city outside, as if the walls held back. More than sound, the girl stood near the table, her silver eyes moving from the plain shelves to the worn bed, and then back to him. Everything in the room was simple, almost empty, but she felt as if the space itself carried secrets. He stood across from her, still, watchful, as if measuring every word before it left his mouth. She wanted to speak first, but her throat was dry. The silence pressed on her until at last she whispered, "You cannot keep hiding forever." His gaze lowered for a moment. He placed his bag on the table and opened it slowly. Inside were ordinary things: folded cloth, a book with worn edges, a small piece of crystal that glowed faintly when his hand touched it. He closed the bag again before she could see more. "I am not hiding," he said softly. "I am surviving." The words carried a weight she did not fully understand. She stepped closer, careful with her voice. "Those marks on you, I have seen them before, drawn on old walls when I was young. They were called the Path of Stars. My elders said they belonged to someone who would one day rise to guide others. Most called it a bedtime tale." Her words made his eyes flicker, a shadow of recognition, but he shook his head. "Stories are dangerous when people begin to believe them. If they see me as part of such a story, I lose the only thing I have: an ordinary life." She tilted her head. "But you are not ordinary." He almost smiled, but it faded quickly. He turned away, walking to the window where dim city lights spilled across the floor. His shoulders looked heavy, as if carrying something invisible. "I have spent years trying to be ordinary, serving drinks, washing dishes, moving from place to place. No one notices a waiter. That is safer than being noticed." The girl moved to stand beside him. She did not touch him, but her voice was gentle. "Then why did the marks glow tonight? They stayed hidden until I pulled your shirt. Why now?" His silence stretched. Finally, he whispered, "Because they are not only mine. They respond to others, to presence, to connection." He glanced at her, his eyes holding hers, and for the first time in years, they responded. Her breath caught. She looked away, her heart unsteady. "So it was not by chance that I saw them." "Perhaps not," he said. "Or perhaps it was only fate playing games with us." They both stood in silence, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. She tried to think of what to say next, but the air between them felt heavy with meaning she did not yet understand. Finally, she asked, "Do you know what they mean, the marks?" He shook his head slowly. "Only pieces. They are said to be a map, or a message, or a key. I do not know which. All I know is that others search for them, and if they discover I carry them, my life changes forever." Her silver eyes widened. "Others? You mean there are people who already know the marks are real?" He gave a quiet nod. "Yes, but they are not looking for myths. They are looking for power. That is why I hide." The girl shivered, not from cold but from the weight of his words. She thought of the way he carried himself in the tavern, quiet and unnoticed. Now she understood it was not shyness, but protection. Every step, every silence, every lowered gaze had been a shield. "You let the world believe you are no one," she said softly. "That is the safest way to be someone." He answered. For a while, they said nothing. The night deepened outside, stars hidden behind the tall towers. She felt the urge to leave, to give him space. But something inside her resisted. Curiosity was no longer the only reason she stayed. There was something else now, something harder to name. When she finally turned to go, his voice stopped her. "You should not come back. If you stay near me, the marks may react again, and if others notice." He trailed off, his eyes distant. She looked at him from the doorway. "You think I can just walk away now?" He met her gaze, silent. She gave him a faint smile, soft but unshaken. I saw something tonight I was never meant to see. You cannot erase that. And maybe I was never meant to. With that, she stepped into the night, her cloak wrapped around her, her heart heavier but brighter at the same time. Inside, he stood alone again, staring at the faint glow of the crystal on his table. For the first time in years, his quiet world no longer felt safe. And for the first time in years, he wondered if safety was what he truly wanted. The next morning came softly, with pale light spilling between the tall towers of the city. The alien girl had not slept. Her mind turned in circles, replaying every detail from the night before, the human's steady voice, his warning, and the glow of the marks beneath his shirt. She tried to tell herself to stop thinking about it, to let it go, but her heart carried its own voice. It whispered that she had stepped into something important, something she was not meant to walk away from. She returned to her normal routine. But everything felt different now. Her friends spoke of simple things: work, travel, and gossip about who had embarrassed themselves at the tavern. She laughed at the right moments, but her thoughts stayed far away. Each time someone asked if she was listening, she only smiled faintly and changed the subject. Inside, she carried a secret too heavy to share. That evening, she found herself back near the tavern. She told herself it was only chance, that her feet had wandered without thinking. But deep down she knew the truth. She was waiting for him. The street grew darker, lit by the glow of floating lamps. When the door finally opened and the human stepped out, her breath caught. He looked the same as always, carrying himself quietly. But now she saw him differently. She saw not just a waiter, but someone who carried a mystery on his skin. He noticed her at once. His steps slowed, and for a moment, his face showed a flicker of surprise, maybe even disappointment, but he did not turn away. He walked toward her with calm steps until they stood only a few paces apart. "You came back," he said simply. "I couldn't stay away," she admitted. Her voice was steady, though her heart trembled. "I want to understand." He studied her carefully. "Understanding is not always safe, neither is wondering forever," she replied. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, with a quiet sigh, he motioned for her to follow. They walked together through the narrow streets, the city lights glimmering above them. The world around seemed ordinary, yet every step carried a weight of unspoken meaning. At last, they stopped at a quiet garden tucked between two old buildings. Few people came here. The air was filled with the scent of night flowers and the sound of water trickling from a small fountain. He sat on a stone bench, and she joined him, the soft glow of the flowers painting their faces in gentle light. "You want to know what I am," he said, his voice low, "but I am not sure I know myself." Her silver eyes widened slightly. "How can that be? They are written on you. They must mean something." He looked down at his hands, his fingers brushing against his wrist. "When I was young, the marks began to appear. At first, they were faint. My family thought it was an illness, something to be hidden. But as I grew, they became clearer, brighter. People whispered. Some feared me, others expected me to be something I could not understand." She listened, her chest tight. He had carried this since childhood, carrying not just the marks, but the weight of others' eyes. "So you ran," she said gently. "Yes, I ran until I became no one. A waiter, invisible. It was easier than carrying the burden of being something I never asked to be." Her heart ached at his words. She had always felt overlooked herself, never quite belonging even among her own people. But his solitude was deeper, carved into him by years of hiding. "You are not no one," she whispered. "I saw those marks for a reason. Maybe you are not meant to carry them alone." He looked at her then, truly looked, as if searching her face for something he had lost long ago. The garden light caught in his eyes, and for the first time, she saw a hint of softness behind his guarded expression. "You remind me," he said slowly, "that I am not as invisible as I pretend." She smiled faintly. "You never were." The water from the fountain filled the quiet between them. Neither of them moved, as if both feared breaking the moment. The girl felt something stir inside her, a bond forming, fragile yet undeniable. She had not come here for this. Yet here it was. growing like the flowers glowing softly round them. At last, he stood. If you truly wish to stay near me, you must be ready. The marks are not only symbols, they may draw things we cannot control. Her answer was simple. Then I will be ready. He gave a small nod, half reluctant, half grateful. They left the garden together, the night stretching before them, carrying the quiet promise of something neither could yet name. And though they walked side by side, each step made her feel they were stepping into a story larger than themselves. The days that followed felt different for the alien girl. She noticed it in the smallest things, the way her steps carried new purpose, the way her eyes searched for him even when she told herself not to, the way her heart felt less heavy when he was near. She had lived many seasons feeling like a shadow among her own kind, always half invisible, always half forgotten. But now, for the first time, she felt as if she had been seen, truly seen. The human, however, remained cautious. He spoke with her in quiet tones, shared little pieces of his past, but always left a wall standing between them. She could feel it, his fear of being discovered, his worry that letting her closer would place them both in danger. Still, he did not push her away, and that was enough for her to stay. One evening, the city skies glowed with pale lights, and the air was soft with the smell of rain. She found him on the rooftop of an old building, sitting near the edge, watching the stars. The marks on his arms shimmered faintly, brighter than she had ever seen them before, almost as if the stars themselves were calling to him. You've been waiting for something, haven't you? She asked, sitting beside him. He hesitated, then nodded. All my life. The marks are not just mine, they belong to something greater, though I have never understood what. At times, I dream of voices. At times, I feel pulled toward the sky. But when I wake, it fades, leaving me with only questions. She turned her gaze upward. Maybe it is not about waiting. Maybe it is about choosing. You keep running from who you are, but what if who you are is the answer someone else has been searching for? Her words lingered in the night air. The human closed his eyes, as if the truth of them weighed more than he wanted to admit. Then, without warning, the marks on his skin began to glow brighter, their light spilling across the rooftop. The girl gasped softly, but she did not move away. Instead, she reached for his hand. The moment their fingers touched, the light grew warmer. Not sharp, not frightening, just warm, steady, alive. For the first time, the marks seemed to accept her presence, as if they had been waiting for her all along. His eyes widened. This has never happened before. Then maybe it was meant to happen with me, she whispered. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain, beginning to fall around the rooftop. Droplets sparkled in the light of his marks, turning the night into a silver glow. Together they sat, their hands joined, their breaths unsteady, their hearts too full for words. The girl felt something shift deep inside her. She had always believed her life would be one of silence, of being overlooked. But here, in this moment, she understood. She had not been forgotten. She had been waiting, just as he had. And now their waiting had found its purpose. When the light finally dimmed, he looked at her with eyes no longer guarded, no longer heavy with fear. For the first time, he let the wall fall. You are the first person I have trusted with this, he said softly. And I will not leave, she answered. The rooftop was quiet again, but everything had changed. The girl knew that whatever the marks truly meant, whether they were a gift, a curse, or a message from something far beyond the stars, it no longer belonged to him alone. It belonged to them both. The night wrapped around them like a gentle promise, and though the world below carried on in its usual rhythm, the alien girl and the human knew that something rare and unspoken had taken root between them, something that would not fade, no matter what came next. And for the first time in her life, she did not feel left out. She felt chosen.